Parshas Vayikra is often a parsha that people recoil from because it gets very complicated and much of it seems completely irrelevant nowadays. But really, if one takes the time and the effort and delves in to Parshas Vayikra, the beginning of Sefer HaKarbonos, the book of sacrifices and offerings, it is not only fascinating on an intellectual level, but also on an emotional level, on a psychological level, and on a spiritual level. And one can really glean infinite insights into elements that are practical till our are practical in our everyday lives. Because although we don't bring physical sacrifices or offerings today, we haven't for close to 2,000 years, the theme that the parsha represents, verse by verse, still challenges us and speaks to us today. And today I want to employ and discuss one example of that in Parshas Vayikra. Generally, a brief introduction is necessary. There were different types of karbonos, different types of offerings that were brought first in the Mishkan and then in the Beis HaMikdash. Basically, all karbonos can only be brought from 5 minim, from 5 types of living creatures, no more than 5. Number 1, you have the bakar, the ox. Number 2, you have the tzayin, the sheep, the keves. Number 3, you have the aiz, the goat, whether female or male. But you have the ox, you have the sheep, you have the goat, and then you have 2 birds, toirim and bnei yoina, turtle doves and young pigeons. Those are the only 5 living creatures from which any carbon was ever brought, besides, of course, meal offerings brought from grain. There were only 4 types of karbonos. 4 types. You have a carbon oila, a carbon shlamim, a carbon chatas, and a carbon asham. An oila, a chatas, an asham, and a shlamim. Those were the 4 types of offerings which had different procedures and different laws governing each one. There were another 3 that relate to an individual: B'chor, Meiser, and Pesach. Altogether 7. So you have oila, shlamim, chatas, asham, which can be either communal or individual. And then you have another 3 individuals, B'chor, Meiser, and Pesach, which are another 3 types of karbonos that have their own laws governing them. Today, we're going to explore the carbon chatas, which in English you would translate as the sin offering. Okay, so you could all look in. A person who commits a sin inadvertently, and the Torah goes on to list different categories of people who may commit this sin inadvertently, and the result is, the law is that this person has to bring a carbon chatas during the time of the Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash. You made 2 pages? 1 or 2? Okay. There's two source sheets, okay? Thank you, Rabbi Nehemiah Kaplan. There's a second sheet 1. If somebody bring over the second one too. I have the first. This one, yeah. The first one starts with a pasuk. The second one starts with chulin. I guess it would have been easier to number the pages, but that's modern technology. The first one starts with a pasuk, Vayidaber Hashem, and the second one starts with the word chulin. Gemara and chulin. Okay, everyone has? The women you got, the men have? Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing them. Shimshon. Could you make me a coffee? Thank you. Okay, so take a look in source number 1. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe leimer. Vayikra perek dalet pasuk aleph. Daber el bnei Yisrael leimer. Nefesh ki sechte b'shgaga mekol mitzvahs Hashem asher loisei asena v'asa me'achas mehena. Speak to the children of Israel. A person who sins inadvertently and commits a sin, violating one of the commandments of Hashem. Hashem said not to do it, and this person did it. And the Torah goes on to discuss the law that this person, as a result of this inadvertent, mistaken sin, which we call a shoygig, bishgaga, must bring a chatas offering. What does the chatas offering consist of? It could be one of two things, either a female goat or a female sheep. The chatas is always, the chatas of an ordinary individual who commits an inadvertent sin is always a female animal, either a sheep or a goat. That is the person's choice. The Rambam sums up the halacha in Hilchos Shgagas Perek Aleph. In the Rambam's Mishnah Torah, the laws of inadvertent sins, the first chapter, the opening halacha, this is what the Rambam says. Every word here is precise. Somebody who transgresses inadvertently, doing one of the mitzvahs loisasa, one of the mitzvahs that the Torah says you're not allowed to do, and this person does it by mistake. And it's a type of mitzvahs loisasa sheyesh b'maisa, meaning it doesn't involve thoughts or a verbal declaration. It involves a maisa, an action. Shechayovin aleh kares, and it's not only something the Torah prohibits. The penalty for it would be death, being cut off from heaven, a heavenly death penalty. Such a type of sin, and he does it or she does it by mistake. Harei ze chayav lahakriv karban chatas. This person is obliged to offer a sin offering. It's a positive commandment that in this case he should bring an offering for his or her inadvertent sin. And the Rambam continues, how many sins warrant such a type of offering? How many do you think? There are 365 negative commandments. But how many of them qualify for a karban chatas based on the qualifications? It has to be a mitzvah loisasa. It has to be a mitzvah loisasa sheyesh b'maisa, action, right? Somebody, for example, who gossips or slanders, you're not allowed to say lashon hara, but there's no maisa. A megadev, somebody who curses, chas v'shalom ribono shalom, there's no maisa, and it has to be yesh b'kares. There's a death penalty for it. So how many are there? Anybody? 43. 43 sins can warrant a karban chatos. And the Rambam lists them off from the Mishnah. Nimtzu kol krisis shebarayis shisha ve'esrim ubeshara averis shiva asar. Of all the mitzvahs loises, when it comes to immoral relationships, there's a possibility of 26, and all other averis 17. And the Rambam lists 26 and 17. And the Rambam lists them all off, and you have the list ve'eluhein. Somebody worships idolatry with an action, not just verbally or in thought, in an action by mistake. He gives his children to an avodah zarah. Different types of sorcery. Classic example, somebody violates the Shabbos, somebody goes and lights a fire on Shabbos, somebody cooks on Shabbos, somebody bakes on Shabbos, somebody plows, plans, builds on Shabbos, writes on Shabbos, carries on Shabbos, but it was a mistake. How can there be a mistake? It could be one of two ways. Either they didn't know the fact or they didn't know the law. Either you forgot it's Shabbos or you forgot the law that you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. You know it's Shabbos, but you forgot. You work on Yom Kippur, you forget it's Yom Kippur, or you forget you're not allowed to do this malacha on Yom Kippur. This happened to many people, right? You wake up Yom Kippur in the morning, you take a drink, you forget it's Yom Kippur. You eat chametz and Pesach. Again, you forget it's Pesach, or you forget you're not allowed to eat chametz on Pesach. Somebody eats chaylev. What is chaylev? There's certain fatty parts of the animal that are permissible to eat. We call those shuman. the fatty, healthy parts of the animal, and then you have the chaylev, which are the forbidden parts of the fat, and you eat it. Ha'oichel dam, somebody eats blood, and the Rambam continues, Oichel noiser, Oichel pigel, and he continues, he finishes, these are 43 sins that if a Jew, a man or a woman, commits them inadvertently, by mistake, and then of course he or she becomes aware of their mistake. So in the time of the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan, they were obligated to bring a carbon chatas, a sin offering on these 43 sins, either, as I said, a female sheep or a female goat. The Torah in Vayikra considers 4 cases of people who have to bring a chatas: the anointed priest, HaKohen HaMashiach, which is the Kohen Gadol. Kol Ha'eda, the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court, makes a mistake. They also bring a carbon chatas. The prince, Asher Nasi Yechtiv, the king. And finally, the ordinary Jew, man or woman, who commits any of these averis, brings a carbon chatas, the female or male female sheep or goat, not male. Now, as we see from the Rambam, the sin offering was not brought for any sin. It was brought for major sin, which means those that warrant the penalty of karas being cut off, and it had to be committed unintentionally or inadvertently, right? So this can happen either, as we said, the person forgot the law, or the person forgot the facts. Now, when we speak about a shoygig, we have to remember, unintentional sins stand midway between intentional sins and the other extreme. Intentional sins, if I knew what I was doing and I knew it was wrong, we call that a mazit. Then you can't bring a carbon. A carbon is only atonement for a shoygig, for an inadvertent sin. Mazid has completely different issues. For example, in these 43 sins, if the person did it b'mazid, there's a penalty of kares. Of course, only if the person doesn't do tshuva. The great idea about kares is, since it comes from heaven, so heaven knows if you repent, and then the sin is forgiven. But if it's a mazid, the carbon, the offering, will not help anymore. So it has to be a shaygig, it has to be inadvertent. On the other hand, it has to be a mistaken act. It can't be involuntary action, which we would call an onus. Somebody points a gun to somebody's head and says, eat the blood. That's not called a shaygig. They didn't make a mistake. They were forced to do it in order to save their life. Or somebody does something as a result of a reflex action. So this is completely involuntary. Involuntary actions don't need atonement. The sin offering, the carbon chatas, is confined to the middle range of cases. You did wrong, but you didn't know that what you're doing was wrong. Even today, there's no Beis HaMikdash, so there's obviously no carbon chatas. The fundamental idea remains the same. When a person commits a sin by mistake, they need atonement. In other words, it's not just a gzeres hakosov. You have to bring a carbon if you make a mistake. The fundamental idea is you need atonement. How do we know this? So the Rambam clearly says it. Take a look, first of all, in Rashi. Rashi Shvuas Daf Beis Amud Aleph Dibra Maschel Toila. Okay. Rashi says, Shekol hashoygigin srichim kapara l'kashayedu. Any person who does a sin by mistake needs atonement when he finds out. The pasuk says in Noach, it's a very interesting pasuk. Va'achas dimchem l'nafsheseichem edrish miyad kol chaya edrishenu miyad ha'odem miyad ish achiv edrish es nefesh ha'odem. The blood of your souls I will demand. From every living creature I will demand it. And from a person, and from his brother I will demand it, the soul of the person. Now the structure of this pasuk is a very fascinating structure, but let's see the interpretation of Rashi. Umiyad ha'adam, miyad ha'hoirig b'mezid ve'in eidim ani edrish. I will demand the blood from a person who kills somebody willingly, and there's no witnesses, so nobody therefore will punish this person. Miyad ish achiv, miyad shu oyev loy ka'ach v'hargoy shoygig ani edrish im loy yigole v'yivakish alavoynei limchel limachel sha'af shoygig tzarech kapara. Somebody actually who kills his brother, in other words, he loves him, he's a friend, but he does it by mistake, it's inadvertent. he too needs atonement, and therefore if he doesn't go and seek forgiveness for what he did, I will exact it from him. So clearly Rashi says, shoygig tzarich kapara. A person did something by mistake, they need atonement. The Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva Perik Aleph, the next source, Kol ha-mitzvahs shebetorah, bein esei bein loisasa, im avar adam al achas mehen bein bezodin bein bishgaga, ksheyaset tshuva v'yoshuv mechetei chayev lisvadis lifnei hakel baruch hu. Any mitzvah, positive or negative, if a person transgresses them willingly or inadvertently, when the person decides to do tshuva and repent, this person is obligated to confess before God and express their remorse for the past and their resolution for the future. Clearly, the Rambam is articulating a halacha. A person may commit a sin by mistake, inadvertent. They didn't realize, they didn't know, they weren't cognizant of the law or of the facts. And nonetheless, there is the mitzvah of tshuva, irrelevant of the Beis HaMikdash or not the Beis HaMikdash. In fact, the Rambam here includes every mitzvah's essay or mitzvah's loisasa, which of course, even in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, would not warrant a carbon chatas, excluding those 43 that we spoke before about. And here we come to the obvious question. What's the obvious question? Why should unintentional sins require atonement at all? Why does the person have to go and purchase a sacrifice and bring it to the Beis HaMikdash and go through the entire procedure or do tshuva? What guilt is involved? I mean, it seems so unjust and so unfair. The person really did not know. We're not talking about a fake shoygig, a stage shoygig. We're talking about an authentic shoygig. God knows the truth like you know the truth. It was a shoygig. You forgot it's Yom Kippur. You forgot it's Shabbos. You didn't realize this is a forbidden piece of fat. It just looked like a good fatty part of the rib steak. That's it was. In a lovely kosher restaurant, which is usually glad kosher mahadrim and mahadrin. The person was as innocent as one can be. Why is there any guilt? Why is it called a sin? Why does one need atonement? That is the question. Practically speaking, had the offender known the facts and the law at the time, he would have not done what he has done. The only reason he did it is because of ignorance of the facts or of the law. So why does he have to undergo a process of atonement? How can you hold a person liable? I mean, in our own relationships, can you really hold a person liable when he had absolutely no intention of doing anything wrong? There was no malicious intent. There was no abusive intent. There was no act of contempt. There was no act of rebellion. It didn't come of laziness, of apathy, of carelessness, of immorality, of promiscuity at all. It was what we call an innocent mistake. How do we make sense of the carbon chatas? So today we want to go on a little journey. And the journey is through generations of mefarshim, of commentators, from different world views, from different perspectives of Jewish thought, of Jewish machshava, and see how the sages and the rabbis throughout the generations dealt with this question. Why do we bring a carbon chatas? Let's begin with one of the most fundamental works, the Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch, you probably know, but I'll say it, is a fascinating work. It's the first encyclopedic work on all of the 613 mitzvahs. If somebody wants to know, what are the 613 mitzvahs? You open up the Sefer HaChinuch, the book of education. He lists in the order of the parshias every single mitzvah and discusses its reason, its basic laws, and its basic objectives. It's an encyclopedic, brief summary of what is the mitzvah, what is the root and the idea of the mitzvah, and some of the basic laws around the mitzvah. That's the Sefer HaChinuch. Challenge is we don't know who authored the Sefer HaChinuch. It's one of the books whose author remains mysterious till today, although many historians believe it was a man named Reb Aaron Halevi, who's often referred to in halachic literature as the Ra'ah Reish Aleph Hey, Reb Aaron Halevi, one of the great sages of Spain, of Barcelona in Spain, who lived in the 13th century, in the 1200s, and the beginning of the 1300s in Barcelona. Many believe he authored the Sefer HaChinuch. If that would be the case, it was a subsequent work that came after the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvahs, where the Rambam also made a collection of all of the 613 mitzvah Sefer HaMitzvahs, a brief paragraph or 2 paragraphs for each mitzvah. The advantage of Sefer HaChinuch, though, is he discusses the reason for every mitzvah. He finds the reason, often the hashkafic reason, the spiritual reason, the educational and pedagogical reason. The Sefer HaChinuch discusses this question in Parshas Truma, Mitzvahs Esei Tzadik Hey, when he discusses the Beis HaMikdash. Let's see what he says. Haloi amarnu. We have said, the Sefer HaChinuch says this many times, Ki ikri alavavis tluyim acher ha'pa'ulas. Fascinating insight of the Sefer HaChinuch. Your heart follows your actions. It's not that your actions follow your heart follows your actions. Which means, when you keep on doing something, you develop a connection to it emotionally. Action creates dents in the soul. Action redefines emotion. Sometimes people say, I have to wait till I'm emotionally ready. And yeah, in some cases, you have to wait till you're emotionally ready. But sometimes, if you wait till you're emotionally ready, you may wait for eternity, because actions often are what define emotions. This is a yisoid in Sefer HaChinuch. V'alkein ki yechte ish, when a person sins inadvertently, lo yitar liba yafe b'dvar. Svasayim levad, sheyoymar beinoi ulekoisel. Interesting expression. Chatasi lo yosefait. When a person sins inadvertently, he shouldn't only cleanse himself through his lips by turning to the wall and saying in Yiddish, speak to the wall. And tell Hashem, I sinned, I won't do it again, I'll be more careful. Lakachas memichla oisav atudim v'litroyach laviel malabayis hanochen alakoyen v'chol ha'maisa kosuv b'karbonos ha'choitim mitoich kol ha'maisa godlahu yikva b'nafshe roya hachet v'yimna mimenu pa'am acheres. What the Sefer HaChinuch really is saying is, the whole shturim, the whole effort around the carbon chatas is really to teach him to be cautious for next time. All I'm asking you is, I know you were innocent, you made a mistake. Be cautious. So therefore, you don't just tell him, okay, you made a mistake. He brings a carbon, he brings an animal, he goes to the Beis HaMikdash, he takes some of his possessions, and he goes through the whole toil and effort that a carbon demands, both in terms of finances and in terms of personal time and energy. This will inculcate in the person the seriousness of the action, and therefore, in the future, he will or she will be sure not to do it again. Very practical, straightforward idea of the Sefer HaChinuch. It's an educational objective. The Ramban, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Nachman, the 13th century great sage of Spain as well, of Barcelona, a physician, a doctor, a philosopher, one of the greatest rabbis of the time, who wrote a commentary on Chumash, asks the question in Parshas Vayikra. The Ramban says, you could take a look in your next source. Ramban here, Perek Dalet, Pasuk Beis in Vayikra. Nefesh kisechta, when a soul sins inadvertently. Zok the Ramban. Is it something I'm saying, or something you're doing, or it's disconnected to to us? I guess every Maggid Shir wishes on himself to bring the house down, or to bring the roof down, no? So the Ramban, I said, Ramban lived in the 12th century and in the 13th century. The Ramban says, let's read. Fascinating insight. Ba'avur heyois hamachshava b'nefesh v'hi hashoygeges hiskir kan nefesh. Why does it say nefesh kisechta, a soul that sins? It's a rare expression in Chumash, nefesh kisechta. He says because the issue here was awareness, thought. In other words, his machshava he didn't realize. So therefore, we call it nefesh, which is attributed to the person's consciousness. What's the reason to bring an offering for a soul that makes a mistake? Mipnei shekol ha'avonos yoilidu gnai b'nefesh, v'heim mumba, v'loi tiske lahagbil pnei yotzra rak b'yoysa tahira mikol chet. The Ramban is saying, because there is an objective effect of the action irrelevant of my motivation or consciousness or intention. In other words, sin in any form, intentional or unintentional, makes an impression. It has an impact. It has an impact on the person, and it has an impact on the world. And therefore, the person is not guilty in the sense we're blaming you because you are evil. No, you're not evil. You were completely innocent. What we're saying is, you made a mistake, true. But the mistake has consequences. The Ramban says, "Yoilidu gnai b'nefesh." It creates a stain in the soul. The person ate chametz on Pesach. The person violated Shabbos. The person cohabited in an immoral relationship inadvertently. It leaves an impression on the soul. It creates a blemish in the world around us. It's a stain on the soul, and therefore, as the Ramban says, the soul is only fit to encounter its maker when it's cleansed. What's his words? To have dveikus, to be able to have a relationship with my Creator, even in this world. One has to be pure. One has to be cleansed. One can't be dirty. One can't be soiled. And if I made mistakes, I have to make amends. I have to fix it. If not for this, all the fools who make mistakes constantly, but they're always sinning by mistake, would all have the same relationship. It doesn't work that way. And that's why the inadvertent soul brings an offering in order to come close and cleanse itself from the sin, from the blemish, to be able to come close to God, who imbued the pure soul in the person, Asher Nesana, and gave it to us pure, tahirihi, and it was blemished, so I have to clean over the blemish, and that's why it also says nefesh, because the word nefesh explains why we have to bring a carbon chatas, because you have a soul, and the soul is so pure, and as a result of my actions, even by mistake, the soul experienced a blemish, therefore nefesh kisechta. There's a soul. If you wouldn't have a soul, okay, you made a mistake, but you have a soul here, and there's an objective impression that is negative, and therefore one needs cleansing. This is what the Ramban is explaining to us. So the Sefer HaChinuch gives us an educational point of view. It's basically for the future. The Ramban says it's not only for the future, it's basically even for this time, because of the objective impression that any sin makes, whether it's mazid or it's shaygik. I guess if somebody has one of the oldest jokes is they say that Moshe Dayan, who was Israel's defense minister, you remember Moshe Dayan had a patch on one of his eyes? So there's an old joke. He was once driving on an Israeli highway 150 kilometers per hour, which in Israel is not that fast, especially in the week before elections. And a policeman stopped him, and he sees Moshe Dayan behind the wheel, and he says, "General Dayan, you ought to serve as a role model for Israeli society. Lama tanaheka mishuga. You're driving like a madman. I should quadruple your summons. Because, mimenu yiru v'chein yaseh." So Moshe Dayan supposedly looks at the officer and he says, "Listen, Adoni Ashoter, my dear officer, look at me. I have one eye. Now, what would you like me to do with that eye? Look at the speedometer or look at the highway?" If somebody has a impaired speedometer, if somebody has a faulty speedometer, you're driving on the highway and you don't realize the speed. As a result, you crash into another car and you wreak havoc and damage. The person certainly was innocent. The speedometer was broken. I thought I was driving according to the speed limit. But there was damage done. There was damage done, and I'm the one who caused that damage. I didn't mean to. I'm not a bad guy. I wasn't malicious, but I caused the damage. I have to take accountability for it, and I have to pay you for the damages. It's true halachically, and we all understand it rationally and logically. The Ramban applies the same rule when it comes to one's spiritual life, when it comes to one's moral life, when it comes to one's ethical life. The Ramban is very important nowadays because there is a trend in Western society, and I believe the first one to have really brought in this trend was Immanuel Kant, that intentions and motives are the key factor in the moral life. The key issue in the moral life is what you were thinking, what you were feeling, what your intentions were. And as long as your intentions were noble, then you're noble. And what the Ramban is bringing out is that of course intentions are very important. And of course motivations are extremely important. And of course a shoygig is not amazing. And the laws are different. But you cannot escape responsibility from the power of actions. I said something, I did something that hurt somebody. Even with the best motivations, I have to ask forgiveness. I did something even between me and God. It leaves an impact, even if I was innocent. And I have to take accountability for it. So the Torah does not fault us for mistakes, the Ramban is saying. The Torah is not telling you you're a horrible person because you made a mistake. That's a horrible idea. That's not what the Torah is saying. The Torah is not demanding perfection. The Torah is demanding accountability, not perfection. We're all shoygigs, we all make mistakes. But nefesh ki sechta, realize your greatness, you have a soul. And you made a mistake, you were innocent. You know, some people, things happen to them and as a result they do things to other people. Not knowing better, we all live life with the tools that we have, and sometimes those tools are very limited. And suddenly, a few years later, this person is in recovery, or this person develops maturity, or this person becomes more sensitive to life, or develops more confidence, more wisdom, whatever it is, and I realize, oy, how could have I been so foolish? Okay, don't be perfect, and don't blame yourself for being imperfect, but be accountable. Nefesh ki sechta, you have a soul, and other people have a soul. That's what the Ramban is telling us. Somebody once sent me a line, he said, if you don't make mistakes, you're not working on hard enough problems, and that's a big mistake. People make mistakes. While one person hesitates because he feels inferior, the other is busy making mistakes and becoming superior. There was a physicist, Niels Bohr, a very famous physicist, and he once said, an expert is a man who has made all the mistakes which can be made in a very narrow field. And when you make all those possible mistakes, you become an expert. You know, there was, they tell an old anecdote. This is for the Ezra Nashim. A man once told his wife that she has to listen to him. So she said, why? He said, because that's how it works. She said, why? What's the logic? So he said, because men are superior to women. So she says, who says so? He says, it's obvious. Look at God. He created men first. Why? Why did he create men first? Because men are superior. His wife told him that you're a shaita, you're a fool. God created men first because we learn from mistakes. So, mistakes are inevitable. They're inherent to the human condition. The question is not if I will make a mistake. The question is when I will make a mistake. And the response is not guilt and blaming myself forever that I made a mistake, but taking accountability and making amends. I want to point out something fascinating. When the Torah speaks about the 4 categories of people who have to bring a carbon chatas, speaks about Kohen Gadol, speaks about the Sanhedrin, speaks about an ordinary Jew, and it speaks about the Nasi, the king, the leader. If you take a look, on each of them it says Im HaKohen HaMashiach Yechta. If the Kohen Gadol sins, Im Kol Adas Yisrael Yishgu, if the Sanhedrin makes a mistake, Asher Nasi Yechta, when the leader will sin, not if. So the Sefarno says, Rabbi Navadia Sefarno says, Motzui Hu Sheyechta. It's not a question if, it's a question, Asher means when. Rashi also says it means Ashrei. Ashrei, fortunate is a generation that the leader is accountable. But it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Why? If you're a leader, you make mistakes. If you have the privilege of living in a cocoon on top of a mountain, detached from people, then you could be immune of making mistakes. When you're a leader, sometimes you don't have a choice whether to make a mistake or not. By definition, you're involved in an imperfect world with imperfect people, and any choice you make is a mistake. Take the classic example of the Gemara in Gittin, Daf Nun Zayin. You know what I'm talking about? Scharya ben Afkilas. What happens? There's the story of Kamtza and Bar Kamtza. Right? The person who's thrown out of the party and is insulted says, I'm going to Rome. Goes to Rome and says, the Jews have rebelled against you. How can you prove it? Send an offering. They won't offer it in the Beis HaMikdash. Right? He sends an offering. And what does this Jew do? He blemishes it. It's now disqualified. The Chachamim see this. What do they say? We have to offer it. We have no choice. It's Pikuach Nefesh. It's the Emperor of Rome. It's the Caesar. What does Scharya ben Afkilah say? He's one of the great sages of the time. He says, people will say that you're allowed to offer a blemished animal in the Beis HaMikdash. We can't. The Chachamim say, okay, there's only one other choice. We have to get rid of this person. We have to get rid of this person. It's too dangerous. He's a musser. He's endangering the whole future of Klal Yisrael. Scharya ben Afkilah says, but then people are going to say that for blemishing an animal that belongs on that's carbon, there's a death penalty. We can't do anything. What does the Gemara conclude? What does Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai say? An vosnusoi shel Scharya ben Afkilas hechriva es mikdashenu sorfa es beisenu vehigla es Yisrael. The anvasnuse, how do you translate it? Not humility, the piety, the tzitkus, the humility, the goodness, the midas chasidus of Scharya ben Afkilas. That's what caused the churban. Now, what was he trying to say? Scharya ben Afkilas was trying to be an erlich yid. You don't kill somebody for blemishing an animal. Is it wrong? Yeah, but he doesn't die. And you can't kill somebody for that. And you can't offer a carbon that's blemished. In an ideal world, he was right. But this was a tragic world. This was a horrible world. This was an imperfect world. This is a world where the Roman lion was on your throat. Since Pompey already came in before 60 before the Common Era, and this was the next century. So, you make the right choice, you're making the wrong choice. You make the wrong choice, you make the right choice. And when you make a wrong choice, it's still a wrong choice, even if it's the right choice. Asher nosi yechta, not if. It's a question of when. Leaders who are involved in real life, in a very imperfect and blemished world, make mistakes. And this explains a fascinating thing, a fascinating Gemara. Take a look, Shabbos, Daf Nun Hey Amid Beis. Zog the Gemara, Tana Rabbanon, Arba Meisu Be'etir Shal Nachash. 4 people died for one reason, as a result of the serpent enticing Chava and Adam to eat from the tree of knowledge. That's the only reason they died. Ve'eluhein, Binyamin ben Yaakov, Amram avi Moshe, Yishai avi David, Kalev ben David. 4 people. Binyamin the son of Yaakov, Amram the father of Moshe, Yishai the father of David, Kalev the son of David. What strikes you about this Gemara? Anything? What strikes you about these 4 tzaddikim who were untarnished, unblemished? There was only one reason they died. The only reason they died was because there was a gzeira b'yoyim acholcha mimenu mois tumas. From the day Adam and Chava ate from the tree of knowledge, death became part of life. Till the day when Bila hamavis la netzach u'mocha Hashem alakim dima me'al kolponim. But since till that day, there's etyo shel nachash. There's a partition between the soul and the body, and essentially the person had to live forever because the body is an expression of the soul, and the soul lives forever, the body lives forever. But when that partition was created as a result of etyo shel nachash, that's how the Chachmei HaNister explain it, there's a concept of death. What strikes you about this Gemara? Who's not in this list? Who's not in this list? Moshe is not on this list. Avraham is not on the list. Yitzchak is not on the list. Yaakov is not on the list. David is not on the list. It's almost anonymous figures, right? You didn't even know that David HaMelech had a son Kalev, did you? You didn't even know. How much do you know about Yishai? How much do you know about Amram? Binyamin. And it's interesting, and the Gemara makes sure to emphasize their father's name. We all know who Yishai is. Everybody knows who Amram is. Amram Avi Moshe. One second. Why don't you tell me who Amram's father is? You tell me Binyamin ben Yaakov. Give me Amram's father. You tell me Yishai Avi David. Why don't you give me Yishai's father? We all know who Yishai's father was. Ovid. We all know who Amram's father was. So we see, what is the Gemara trying to say? The Gemara is trying to explain something. And that is, these four people were very different than either their son or their father. Moshe Rabbeinu was a Nasi, he was a leader. He was involved with the people. He stands up to the Rebbeinu Shalom and he says, Va'atem tisach chatasam v'im'ayim mechenina mesifach asher kasafta. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were changing the world. Amram, Binyamin, Yishai, Kalev, they were fantastic people. But when the Gemara mentions them, it makes sure to point out either the father or the son to show the contrast. That in order to be able to die be'etir shal nachash, you have to afford a life of complete transcendence and segregation. And then you make no mistakes and you're capable of never sinning. Well, some of us, even when we're in segregation, we can still sin. I should just emphasize that. So with their greatness, there's also the component that teaches us asher nasi yechte. As the Seforno says, Amnam davor matzu sheyechte. A human being makes mistakes. Just be accountable for the mistakes. This is the shita of the Ramban. This idea of the Ramban introduced a fascinating idea in halacha, which has been heavily debated. Let me first begin with the practical example. We all know Shabbos, there's a domain called Reshus HaRabim, and if you take out an object from your house into Reshus HaRabim, it's a biblical violation. But many properties, especially in today's day, are called Carmelis. A Carmelis is a place that biblically, it's not forbidden. In other words, if you take out something from your house from Reshus HaYachid to a Carmelis, it's a rabbinic violation. It's not a biblical violation because it's not a public domain. What's the qualification of a Reshus HaRabim? It's not so easy to make a Reshus HaRabim. According to some opinions, it has to be a street where 600,000 people walk daily. I mean, there's a machlokes about it. But a real Reshus HaRabim in Torah is often complicated to find, to discover. So here's a question. Let's say you have an Erev. You have an Erev here in Monsey. And the Erev is covering properties that are a Carmelis and not a Reshus HaRabim, which means if the Erev is broken, there's no Erev, and people are carrying, they're carrying from their home into the street, they're carrying in the street. It's not a biblical violation, it's a rabbinic violation. The Erev breaks on Shabbos. The Erev breaks on Shabbos. People don't know. Whoever carries is going to be what? A shoygig, right? A real shoygig. They don't know that what they're doing is forbidden. Am I obligated to notify the people that the Erev is broken? You'll say, certainly, they shouldn't carry. Not so simple. Based on this idea of the Ramban, the Nesivois HaMishpat introduces a gewaltige Chiddush in Halacha. Take a look. Sagt the Nesivois HaMishpat, Choshen Mishpat, Reish Lamed Daled, Sif Katan Gimel in his Biur. The Beisurei Torah, Afilu Oichlon B'Shoigig Tzarech Kapara, Utshuva Lohagin Al-Yisur. Be'isur Rabbanon ein tzarich shum kapara u'ki'ilu loy avar dami mashenken be'isur d'oraisa shemekabel oynesh ala shoygig. Sagt in the Sivis. When we speak about a blemish, an objective dent that a sin creates, it's only by an isur of Torah. Then, even if I did it by mistake, but I did it, and it creates a blemish in my soul and in the world around me, and I need atonement. However, what if I did an Isur D'Rabbanan? Here, if I did it willingly, then I violated an Isur. You're not allowed to be over on an Isur D'Rabbanan. But if I did it by mistake, he says there's no need for atonement. Absolutely. There's no oynish, there's no need. Uki'ilu lo yavar dami. You're completely innocent. Nothing happened. Why? What is this based on? So the great Rav of Lublin, the Torah's Chesed, Reb Shnei Zalman HaKohen, Reb Shnei Zalman Lublino, was a Chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek, one of the great Gaonim, and then went to Yerushalayim, has Talsut Shuvas Torah's Chesed. So he explains the Nesivus. Shal Chuvas Torah Chesed Erechai. The Av Shat Torah Tzivsa Belav the Loisasur Shalei Laver Al Divrei Seifrim. What do you mean? The Torah says Loisasur Min Adavar Asher Gidu Lecha Yom and Ismail. You're not allowed to turn away. You're not allowed to reject the commandment of Bezdin when the Sanhedrin, when the Chachamim, when the Chazal issue forth a commandment, a mitzvah, or tell you you're not allowed to do something. The Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu gave over that the Jewish people are obligated to listen to the Chachamim in every generation. Of course, we're talking about Chachamim who are ordained man to man all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu and are true representatives of Torah. And that's why when we read the Megillah, we say, Asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu al mikra Megillah, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Asher kedishanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbos. Where did God command us to light Shabbos candles? There's no such a commandment in the Torah. The answer is, Hashem told us, Lo yisasur min hadavar asher yagidu lecha. You're obligated to follow the instructions of Bezdin in every generation. So the Torah's Chesed says, what do you mean? You did it by mistake, but you violated the tzivui. And for the Torah's Chesed, Mikol Makoim, Isur Zehu Akarkafte de Gavre, Sha'asur loy laver al divrei Chachamim, aval loy Isur Cheftze. De be Isur Torah kamei chele v'dam sha'adover atzmoi asur min ha-Torah. Umishum hachi av sha'oichle b'shoigig tzarech kapara, sha'arei ochal dvar Isur b'shoigig. Aval be'isur de Rabbanon, ein isur Torah al hadover ba'atzmusoi, aval urak al ha'odam ha'oiver, umishum hachi, kol shahaya shoigig v'loi kivein lavoid al divrei chachamim, loi ovad isure klal. Let's explain what the Torah's Chesed is saying. When a person commits any transgression, the iraisa or the Rabbanon, biblical or rabbinic, there are two components. Number one, I violated the will of my Creator. That's number one. I violated the will of my Creator. That's number one. Number two, it's not I violated the will of my Creator. It's the objective impact of what I did. Every mitzvah creates purity in the world. Every Aveda creates negative energy in my soul and in the world. If I lie, it's like somebody puts their finger onto a hot stove. They may do it by mistake, they may not do it by mistake. It burns the finger, it hurts. Somebody goes out when it's freezing without a coat. They get a cold, even if they didn't realize how cold it is. Why? Because there are natural physical laws to the universe with cause and effect. When a person lies, it has an impact on my soul. My neshama is not the same. Some dirt attaches itself to me and it disturbs me. That's the idea of the Ramban. The objective impact of the mitzvah. Zok the Torah's Chesed. When I do something by mistake, is the first component here that I violate Hashem's will? I'm asking you. Was there an act of betrayal when I do it by mistake? What's the answer? No. So that's gone. When there's a mazid, there's betrayal, and there's the objective impact of the sin. When there's a shaygig, there's no betrayal, it was a mistake. What's left? What's left is the second component. What's the second component? That the cheftze, the object of this food, or this act, creates an impact. And it's a negative impact. It creates a blemish in my nefesh kisechta. Zok the Torah's Chesed, the shit of the Nesivus is, that could only apply by an Issa D'Oraisa. Because by an Issa D'Oraisa, the chayfetz becomes forbidden. The blood is a type of chayfetz that for a Jewish soul is damaging. It's like you're allergic to it. Somebody is allergic to carbs and sugar, like every good Jew, according to your wife at least. You could say, I was at a chasen, I was mamash a shoygig. I saw the Viennese table and I was so involved in Simchas Chassan Kala, I didn't realize that I just packed down, 10 pieces of parava cheesecake with some ice cream. Complete shoygig. But does that mean you're not going to gain 10 pounds? Does that mean you're not going to be lethargic that night? Does that mean you're not going to feel obese? Does that mean you're not going to need some help with your nutrition? You ate the food and it's not good for you. You're allergic to it. Because the food, the chayfetz of the food is not good for your body. It's not good for your blood type. But we're not going to get too much into nutrition here. I don't want to ruin the breakfast. Zok the Torah's chesed, by an isur min ha-Torah, it's an isur chefza. What means an isur chefza? The object itself is redefined based on the blueprint of the Rebbeinu Shalom and Torah. On isur de Rabbanan, he puts in very interesting words. He says, isur ze akarkafta de gavre. The Chachamim said, you're not allowed to eat this food. Yeah. You're not allowed to drink this drink. You're not allowed to do it. Loi saser. You're not allowed to do it. The Chachamim said it. But they didn't change the status of the chayfetz. So if I do it b'mezid, I violated, I betrayed the ratzon of my God, the ratzon of my Creator. Of course I need a kapara. But if I did it b'shoigig, betrayal, there was no betrayal. The impact of the chefza, there's no impact of the chefza. Because the chefza wasn't redefined. So therefore, the Nesivos HaMishpat says, you don't need kapara. You didn't do anything wrong. So if somebody is carrying in a community where there's no Erev, by mistake, and the only Isser of carrying is with the Rabbanan, and they don't know, do I have to tell them? According to the Nesivos. What's the problem? But maybe they're not being over on the Rabbanan. They don't know that the Erev broke. Right? An Isser min ha-Torah, there's no Isser min ha-Torah here. It's just a Tziva min Rabbanan. Akarkafta de Gavra, according to the Nesivos HaMishpat. There's many who say you wouldn't have to tell anybody that the Erev broke. This is not the Psak Halacha. I should just say that. But this is a shitta, although many hold like that. But as we'll soon see, there's a major argument about it. Rabbi Yosef Engel has a famous sefer called Beisa Oitzer and Asven Doiraisa, and he dedicates many pages to discuss this question. Are Isurei de Rabbanan Isurei Chefza or Isurei Gavra? When the rabbis prohibited something, is it a prohibition on the person, or does it redefine the object itself? And he explains what's the svara. He says, La Hashem ha'aretzim loya. Hashem created the world. When he says this is asur, it defines not only the person, it defines the object. It's his world. In fact, the Zohar says, Istakel b'raisa bara alma, which means he created the world based on the blueprint of Torah. If he created the world based on the blueprint of Torah, so basically the world is a mirror of Torah. So if Torah says this is forbidden, so it's expressed, the very object is a davar asur, meaning inherently, it's, so to speak, its chemical and spiritual makeup is a metzias of isur. Other Rabbanan, perhaps they don't have that power. It's not Lashem Arutzim Loya. They instituted the Isur, even though if it was based on their power that was given by Hashem. So therefore, they have the power over the Jew. Hashem tells the Jew, you have to listen to Chazal. But do they have the ability to redefine the chayfetz itself? That the chayfetz should become something that damages the soul? Rabbi Yosef Engel says, perhaps not. That's how the Torah's Chesed explains the Nesivos. And therefore, there's a big difference between a Doiraisa and a Rabbanan. However, many poskim disagree with this Nesivos HaMishpat. And Rabbi Yosef Engel brings a very fascinating Gemara to prove the opposite point. If you take a look at source, at the first source of your second page, the Gemara says in Chulin, Davav Amid Aleph, a story. Reb Zeira v'Rabasi iklu lepundika. Reb Zeira and Rabasi, they came to a hotel. They brought eggs roasted in wine. This wasn't a Jewish hotel. They brought them eggs roasted in wine. Reb Zeira does not eat the eggs. Reb Asi eats it. I'm sorry, I said it wasn't Jewish. It was Jewish. However, the issue wasn't a question of kashrus. The issue was a question of demai. Meaning, there were many Jews known as Amei Haaretz who did not keep, or at least there was a great question if they keep the laws of Maisrus, of tithing their fruits and their produce, the way it has to be done. And therefore, Chazal instituted what we call Demai. Demai is a combination of two words which means Da-mai. What is this? And therefore, because there is doubt if it was tithed or not, so if you purchase produce and fruits for somebody who is under that category, where there's a question if he gives Meiser or not, you have to give it even if it's for a second time. This was this type of hotel. They bring them eggs roasted with wine. The wine comes, of course, from grapes. It's a suffix d'mai. It's taruvas d'mai, meaning they're eating eggs. Eggs is not a problem. You don't have to give meiser from eggs. It doesn't grow from the ground. It comes from chickens. However, the eggs was roasted in wine, so therefore there was a taste of wine. And then the wine comes from grapes, and perhaps they didn't give meiser from the grapes. So how can you eat such eggs? This is what Reb Zera asks Reb Asi. How can you eat it? Amaloi, Reb Asi says, lava datoi. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking. Amar Reb Zera, efsher gozru ala taruvas d'mai. Fascinating response. Is it possible that the Chachamim made a decree al hataruvus of demai, that even when something is mixed with demai, like in this case, it wasn't wine, it was eggs, still it's forbidden, and Reb Asi ends up eating it inadvertently? Hashta behemten shal tzadikim ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mevi takol al yadon tzadikim atzmam like kol sheken. Chazal say that even an animal of tzaddikim, Hashem makes sure that they don't stumble. This is the whole story of Pinchas ben Yair. The animal even didn't eat food that was not kosher, that wasn't tithed. So tzaddikim themselves, the Rebbeinu Shalom would allow Reb Asi, who's a tzaddik, to eat such food that's forbidden. Nafek Reb Zera went out to do research, Dok va'ashkech, and he found out that there was no gzeira on taruvas d'mai, and indeed Reb Asi was completely fine with eating these eggs. So the Rabbi Yosef Engel says, look at the lashon of the Gemara. Mistaya milsa de Reb Asi lemeichel isura. Would Reb Asi eat something that's asur? He says, what does the Gemara mean? In other words, if Chazal said it was forbidden, Reb Zera calls it something that's asur, eating something that's forbidden. Yes, perhaps you could say the Gemara means that since Chazal said you're not allowed to eat it, so therefore it's called isur. Not because the chayfetz is asur, the chayfetz is not asur, but the gavra is not allowed to eat it. But he says a literal, straightforward reading of the Gemara does seem to indicate that even something that's forbidden completely by Chazal, like d'mai, is an isur cheftza, not an isur gavra, even though then he offers another option, and that is, since d'mai is a suffix that maybe there was no maisim in HaTorah, so therefore it's a suffix, maybe that min HaTorah it's not maiser, so that could be another reason it's called isur. The Lekach Toiv goes back and forth, whether the Nesivus HaMishpat Svara about Isuri de Rabbanan being an isur gavra only is authentic or not authentic. The Ur Sameach, Reb Meir Simcha HaKoyin in Rambam Hilchas Gerishin, Perik Aleph, also quotes this Nesivus HaMishpat, and the Ur Sameach puts it beautifully. I'm going to quote a few of his words. He says, Davar ha'asur medivrei soifrim einoi asur be'etzem, rak miloi sasur, v'kivan shalo ha'yamezid, ishtakach dema da'avar loi mipnei shesh loi shama l'divrei skeinim, rak misibas shalo yada v'su leka aveira klal, the Ur Sameach says in Gerishin. When he does it inadvertently, he didn't not listen to the Chacham. He didn't know. It was a mistake. And the only problem is, Loi Sasur. You have to listen to Chazal. He listened. He just didn't know. He thought he was listening. So the Ur Sameach says, Lekavei Reklal. But then the Ur Sameach proves from a Rambam that this is not true, and he rejects the entire svara of the Nesivus HaMishpat, and he redefines the halacha. It's a long Ur Sameach in Hilchas Gerishin, which you could look up, and many therefore argue with the Nesivus HaMishpat and believe that even a Rabbanon would need kapara even if it is a shoygik. Why? If you say it's an isur cheftza, I understand. If you say it's an isur gavra, why would you need kapara even if it's a shoygik? So here we come to yet another interpretation. We discussed the chinuch, we discussed the Ramban. Now we go to another reason why a shoygig may need kapara, and that would explain that even a Rabbanan, if you hold it's an isur gavra, would still need kapara, even though there was no blemish objectively from what you did. Toiras ha'adam laharamban shar hagmul. The next source, the Ramban has his famous shar hagmul in his Sefer Toiras ha'adam, and there he says, if somebody eats forbidden fat by mistake, he's called a chayta. What's his sin? So the Ramban says, shaloi nizar ba'atzmoi, v'lo hayoyore v'chore del divrei hamakim baruch hu shelo yoichal v'lo yaseh dover at sheyivdoi ki yofe yofe v'yizgala loy hadover shehu muter v'royu loy lefig zeiroisav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'al derech hazu hu tam achet hashgoge b'chol haTorah. What the Ramban is saying is, ignorance is not an excuse in life. A person ought to be fully reflective before everything they do. Before I utter words, before I eat something, before I do something, I have to research and make sure I know what I'm doing. A person cannot say, I forgot it's Sunday, I forgot it's Shabbos. What do they say? How do you remember your wife's birthday? If you forget it once. A person can't say, I forgot it's Yom Kippur, I didn't know it's blood, I didn't know it's chaylev, I didn't know the law. Ignorance, it's a fascinating idea. Ignorance in Judaism is not an excuse. It's a fact, but it's not an excuse. The Ramban says here, a person ought to be cautious before I eat. Scrutinize it. Dissect it. Find out if what you're doing right now is consistent with God's will or it's not consistent with God's will. And he says, this is the reason for Chet Hashgaga B'chol HaTorah. I have to find out. I have to be alert. To live means to be present, to be conscious, to be alert, to be focused. And to say, I don't know, find out. Go find out. V'oid, and there's another reason. Shekol dover ha'asur malachlich ha'nefesh ha'metameyose diksiv u'netamtem bam u'lefich u'v'nitmeisem bam u'lefichach nikru shogeg chaytei. And then he gives a second reason, and this reason we know because this is the reason he gives in Chumash. In Chumash he gives the second reason. What's the second reason? That everything that's forbidden soils a pure soul. It's not because of ignorance, it's because of the impression of what you did. Fascinatingly, there's a Rambam in Halacha that says almost the exact same thing. Rambam Hilchos Shgagas Perikei Halacha Vav. Haba alishto sheloi b'shas vesta v'ras adam b'shas hatashmish harei elu p'turin mikarban chatas m'tei shezeh ka'anus u'v'loi shegeg. If somebody is together with his wife, not in the time of the cycle, and then suddenly he sees that there's blood, they're both exempt from a carbon chatas. Why? Nida is a mitzvah's loisasa. Sheyesh b'kares. Yesh b'maisa. Why? He should bring a carbon chatas. He made a mistake. He didn't realize. The Rambam says, no, he's an onus. He's an onus. It's not called a shoygig. Why? Zak the Rambam. Shahashoygig. Hoyaloi livdoik uledaktek. The shoygig, I have a taina. You should have checked. You should have been medaktek. Ve'ilu bodak yofe v'diktek b'shailas lo hayaboladesh goga. If you would have scrutinized, if you would have researched, if you would have asked questions, if you would have asked, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing? You would have never done it. You know why he needs kapara? When he did it, there was a mistake. But why didn't you ask? Why didn't you question? Why didn't you take responsibility for yourself and for everything you're doing in your life? That's what you're bringing atonement for. MS, you didn't know. But the fact that you didn't know, this itself you're guilty for. But what about this case? What about this case? He's a married man. It's not the time of the cycle. Maloy lasas. Tell him, do research. Before you do, okay, let me do research. He asks his wife, is everything fine? Everything is fine. Is everything good? Everything is good according to halacha. What is he supposed to do? Ruach HaKodesh he doesn't have. A prophet he does not. Unexpected, it's completely. Maloy lasos. Harei tohira isa. Shaloi b'shaz vestabal. Ein ze elo oines. This is not called a shoygig. This is called an oines. It's complete involuntary action. It's coerced. He was almost forced. Somebody ties your hands behind your back and feeds you blood. That's called a shoygig. What are you supposed to do? You know it's blood. It's an oinus. Everyone understands it's not a shoygig. Here, nobody forced him to do it. He did it. But as far as his culpability, he was forced. He's an onus. And therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom completely absolves him. Of course, this is not in the shit of the Ramban. In the shit of the Ramban, you would say, There's an objective issue. It's not his fault, but there's an objective issue, being carbon chatas. But the Rambam is saying it's about research. Ignorance is not an excuse. And therefore, as a result of that, the shoygig needs a kapara. Reb Shimshon Rafal Hirsch in his commentary on Vayikra says, shoygig hu choyte machmas hesech hadas. Hainu mipnei sheberega hashgoga einoi nosun b'chol liboy v'nafshoy l'zehirus shemaseyu yiyeh k'teru v'chemitzvah. Almost paraphrasing, quoting these words of the Rambam, even though he doesn't quote it. The sin is hesech hadas. What's hesech hadas? We don't think of it as a sin. Hesech hadas means, I'm talking to you and you're texting. Your child is asking you a question and you're busy texting. That's called hesech hadas. Hesech hadas means you're not fully present in life. What says you're not fully present? When you're doing something, your heart is not there. Your soul is not there. You're not completely focused. Where you are, what you're doing. Wo mir steht, vor wem mir steht. That's the expression. Where you're standing and before whom you're standing. Hesech hadas, that's the issue of shoygig. That's why it needs That's why it needs kapara. So we have the perspective of the Sefer HaChinuch, it's for the future. The perspective of the Ramban and Chumash, it's the objective impression that a mistake and a sin makes. And we have the perspective of the Ramban, and in later generations, Reb Shimshon Rafal Hirsch and his contemporary, or somewhat of his contemporary, next generation, Reb David Tzvi Hoffman. Rav Hirsch and Rav Hoffman were both great Rabbanim in Germany in the 19th century. In his commentary on Vayikra, he elaborates on the interpretation of Rav Hirsch in the same vein. They say the Maisi, the old anecdote. They say there was a Jew who knew better, but he spent his life more or less in a very promiscuous fashion. And every sin he committed. He committed. And whenever they asked him, why are you doing it? He says, I have no issue. Because when I was a child, I was diagnosed that I can't really read, dyslexic, and all the good diagnoses, ADD and ADHD, and illiterate, and therefore I never learned how to read. So therefore I can't read a siddur, I can't daven, I can't read chumash, I can't read halacha, I can't listen, I can't read, I don't know Hebrew, so therefore I have it's not my fault, God created me that way, and therefore I'm good to go. Okay. His day comes after 120 years old, and he comes up to heaven, and they take a look. They print out, Google prints out a database of everything you did and you didn't do, everything you thought, everything you said, and they start looking and they see, this Yid, he really had a good time, and he took it to the limits. He lived quite a hedonistic life. And he tells the angel, he says, listen, it's not my fault, go to God, ask him, I couldn't read, I still can't read, I can't read a word of Hebrew, I can't be an observant Jew. They take a look and they see, Taka, he can't read. He goes straight to Gan Eden. He is excited. I'm a chaya. It's called you have the cake and you eat it too. Sins his whole life. And he goes straight to Gan Eden. Comes to Gan Eden. It's not for him. They're sitting and learning. This is Gan Eden. This is Gehenna. So he goes to the angel at the door. He says, I don't know how long I'm going to survive here. But this is my place. Can I go check out the Gehenna? I think I'll have there first of all, a lot of people I know. It'll be interesting company, probably more fun. There's things going on there, there's action. I said, listen, people usually don't leave from here. It's a one-way, once you're there, it's very hard to get in. It's a whole long process. He begs, do me a favor, I'm a good guy, I'm in Gan Eden. I want to go for a visit. He says, you know what? Do me a favor, he says. Just write me a note. And the note say that I'm from Gan Eden. I'm visiting Gehenna. And when I want to come back, I show the note to whoever is the guard, and he'll let me in. Malach says, no problem. Nice idea. That's fair. Writes him a beautiful note. There's a Gan Eden Yid. He's just visiting Gehenna. He has a place there. He has a seat. He has a stender. It's all good. And he can come back whenever he wants. He takes the note. He goes into Gehenna, and indeed, he sees it's a party happening. Amechaya, the smorgasbords, the pool tables, the casinos, celebrity and freilich in Gehenna. And he sees everyone he knows, everyone he spent time with. Suddenly, 5 o'clock p.m., there's a clap, the fun is over. And now he sees a new picture of Gehenna. Suddenly it's getting very, very hot. Now it's time to go back to Gan Eden. So he runs back to Gan Eden, and with full confidence, he comes to the door, runs in. The guy says, wait. You don't go in. Where are you coming from? Coming from Gehenna? You can't go in there. I have a note. Gives him the note, looks at the note, and he says, I'm sorry, I can't read. So the Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch is making the point, and that is, ignorance in life is not an excuse unless it's really an excuse. Why? Because you can educate yourself. Educate yourself. They once asked a Jew, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? And he said, I don't know and I don't care. Well, ignorance breeds apathy, and apathy is not an excuse because ignorance is not an excuse. Now, let's go over to one last mahalach. And for this, we have to learn another shtickle Gemara. Take a look at the fourth to the last source, Kiddushin Daf Payalef Amid Beis. Zok the Helike Gemara, the Tanya, a fascinating Gemara. We learned in Parshas Matas, the Brisa says, the pasuk in Parshas Matas, Isha hafeirum v'Hashem yislach lo. Bamidbar, Parshas Matas is in Bamidbar. Perek Lamed of Bamidbar is Parshas Matas. A woman takes a vow to do something that is difficult, right? Impulsively perhaps, or for whatever reason. Her husband has the ability to be able to nullify the vow, and she's absolved. So the Torah says, Isha hafeirim, her husband nullified the vow, V'Hashem yislach lo, and God will forgive her. Why does God have to forgive her? Her husband nullified the vow. And for the Gemara, Isha shenodra ben Nazir, a woman decides she wants to become a Nazir. No lechayim anymore, no kiddush, no wine, no grapes. No cutting the hair, no tumah, a life of complete spiritual segregation. V'shama baila, her husband hears about it. He says, there goes my marriage. V'hafelo, Torah says, he tells his Rebbetzin, listen, you mean well, but tumar atoiv, I still want to live in this world with you. He nullifies the vow. V'hi lo yada shahafelo baila. She doesn't know that he nullified it. The next night she goes for a drink. She thinks he's a Nazir. So really, she didn't do a sin. There's no vow, there's no pledge. He nullified it, but she doesn't know that. So now, does she need an atonement or not? So the Torah says, Isha hafeirim v'Hashem yislach la. Because in her mind, she's sinning even though she's not. So you think you're sinning and you're not. Do you need atonement or not? Objectively, mitzad the chefza, you didn't do anything wrong. Mitzad the gavra, right, you remember, mitzad the chefza, you didn't do anything wrong. She's not a Nazir. Mitzad the gavra, the fact that she is betraying her God and her soul, that's still there. Because she thinks she's doing the wrong thing, even though she's not doing the wrong thing. Hashem yislach la, God has to forgive her. Rabbi Akiva ki avamoti lahai psuk avabochi. Where Rabbi Akiva would reach this pasuk in Matas, he would start crying. Omar, he said, Umam mishin iskaven lechel psar chazer v'ola b'yodei psar tle. Omra Torah tzricha kaparo slicha mishin eskaven lechel psar chazir v'ola b'yodi psar chazir alachas kama v'kama. Madach, somebody who had intention to eat pork, and when they lifted up the piece of meat, instead of having chazir, they lifted up a kosher piece of meat. Torah says you still need atonement, like this woman. She didn't do anything wrong, but she wanted to do something wrong. You need atonement. So somebody who has intention to eat pork and eats pork, for sure they need a kapara. Rabbi Akiva was crying. And the Gemara says there's one more place that he cried. Now come to Vayikra. It says in Vayikra, a person does a sin and he's ignorant, he doesn't know that he did it, and he's guilty. Rabbi Akiva used to cry, and this is what he said: Amra Torah v'lo yadav Hashem v'nasa avoinoi mishen eskaven lechel chelev v'yola b'yodei chelev alachas kama v'kama. Madach, if somebody wanted to eat shuman. Shuman is the fatty parts of the animal that are kosher. And by mistake, he took a piece of chaylev which is non-kosher. He needs a kapara. That's the whole din of carbon chatas. You thought you were eating shuman, which is kosher. By mistake, you ate chaylev. You didn't know. You need a kapara. Somebody who wanted to eat chaylev and ate chaylev, for sure they need a kapara. This is amazing. Rabbi Akiva cried by these two psuk. Now, Rabbi Akiva wasn't the crying type. How do I know? The Gemara at the end of Makkas, when everybody was busy crying, what was he doing? He was laughing. By the Beis Hamikdash, Baharat Seifim, everyone was crying, and even then Rabbi Akiva was laughing. He already saw the future. They see a fox coming out of Kodesh HaKadoshim, everybody's crying, and Rabbi Akiva is laughing. He says, till now, I wasn't sure about the Oid Yeshvus Keinim Eskonis B'Rechavis Yerushalayim. But now when I see Tzion Sada Techaresh, that Zion was plowed like a field and foxes are coming out of Kodesh HaKadoshim, I know that every last nevuah of Oid Yeshvus Keinim Eskonis B'Rechavis Yerushalayim is also going to be fulfilled. And the Gemara finishes, B'Lashon Hazeh Amru Lo Akiva Nichamtonu Nichamtonu. Rabbi Akiva saw the good, he saw the positive. The Gemara in Brachas, the famous Gemara, his chicken died and the fire was extinguished and his donkey was killed. And he kept on saying the same words, Kol de'avad rachmana l'tav avid. But at these two psukim, he wept. So the Meshech Chachma, the Or Sameach, in his commentary on Matis, asks, why was Rabbi Akiva the one who wept? All Jews learned these psukim in Chumash. All the Tanaim and all the Amirayim. It was Rabbi Akiva who wept. Why Rabbi Akiva? And I want to ask one more question, if I may. And that's a little diuk. There are 43 Avedas for which you bring a carbon chatas. Rabbi Akiva chooses one. Which one does he choose? Misha niskaven lechel shuman v'ala b'yadoi chelev. He wanted to eat shuman, and instead he ate chelev. That's the example he brings. No other examples. You could say he wanted to eat matzah and by mistake he ate chametz. Doesn't say that. He wanted to eat liver, by mistake he ate blood. Doesn't say that. Ratza lechel shuman, niskaven lechel shuman v'ala b'yadei chelev. It's not the first one of the 43. It's one of them. And in Gemara in Krisis, when the Gemara wants to discuss the carbon chatas, this is usually the example that's brought. In the Mishnah also, Krisis Daf Yud Zayin, there's many examples, but this is the first example. You wanted to eat shuman, and you ate chelev. So now we come to the final perspective of why a carbon chatas needs kapara. What's so fascinating about this perspective is that at the same time that this explanation was shared in the world of Hasidus, in the world of Nister, there was a Jew by the name of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud lived in the early 1900s. His name wasn't Sigmund, his name was Sigmund, his Jewish name was Shloimele Freud, although most people wouldn't know him by that. Lived in Vienna, was a neurologist, and became he's considered today to be the father of psychoanalysis. L'toiv u'lemutiv. And one of the most common phrases, even in today's culture, is, that was a Freudian slip. What's pshat, a Freudian slip? We all make Freudian slips all the time. What Freud often discussed was that there's a whole layer of human experience and emotions and instincts that lay beneath the conscious. You don't know about it. In other words, the primary aspects of my personality I don't even know about. I'm completely ignorant. Why? I'm not conscious. If you ask me, who am I? So even if I'm being honest with you, I can share with you my thoughts, my instincts, my cravings, my fears, at least some of them. But my unconscious layers, I don't know, they're unconscious. And my brain doesn't filter. My brain is a filter and it doesn't allow most of them to come into the conscious. Only in my dreams, which is why he was obsessed with dreams. Because the dreams is a portal to the unconscious. So you say this was a Freudian slip, meaning you just slipped. and you said something, you didn't realize what you were saying, but your unconscious was speaking through your mouth, and you just revealed what you really thought. Now, his shitta was a complicated one, which presumed that the person in his unconscious is pretty bad, it's pretty dirty, it's pretty filthy. But the concept that there's a whole unconscious self that expresses itself in different ways and we may not be conscious of it, that we'll suddenly see is the basis of the carbon chatas. Thousands of years before Sigmund Freud introduced psychoanalysis. And I found this in two sources. One, in the Shem Shmuel, by Reb Shmuel Sachachover. The Shem Shmuel was authored by Reb Shmuel Bornstein, the son of the Avnei Nezer, Rabbi Avraham Bornstein. He wrote a sefer called Shem Shmuel. He was a Hasidic master, lived in Sachachov in Poland. And the Shem Shmuel is on Chumash, and in Vayikra and more in Tzav, he highlights this point. That's one. Similar and quite in a different language, which I'll soon read, I saw in a shmuaz, in a sikh, in a talk by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Simchas Torah, Tovshin Yud Beis, 1951, published in his Likutei Sichos, Volume 3, Vayikra, where he's actually explaining a Rambam in Hilchos Maisa HaKarbonos based on this, and a similar mahalach. Let's see what the Shem Shmuel says. There's two Shem Shmuels, in Vayikra and Tzav, we'll have them both. Shem Shmuel Tzav Tofresh Ayin Aleph. B'mokim asher tishachet ha'oila tishchat chatas. The Torah says the oila had to be slaughtered. Which part of the Mishkan? Tzafon, in the north. And the Torah says in Tzav, the same place where you bring the oila, you have to slaughter the chatas in Tzafon. So everyone says, why can't you just say v'shachat oisay tzafayna, just like you do it by the oila? No, but same place where you do the oila, you have to do the chatas. Why such a roundabout way? So we all understand, because the Torah is trying to say the reason you have to do it in Tzafon is because the oila. That's why it doesn't just say do it in Tzafon. It's because the oila. Zakt Shem Shmuel v'nira al pi masha kasavnu she'inyan hashoigig she'is dam and lish yisrael laverel of belidas. The shoigig that the Jew commits without knowledge, he doesn't know. Hu machmas shebevadai mikvar hishtoikik la'oisei davar. He really has a craving to do that. He has a craving. Really? He doesn't have a craving. He never did it because he's a good Jew. God said not to do it, but he wants to do it. He just doesn't know he wants to do it, but he wants to do it. He never did it. So how do you do something when you want to do it? You make a mistake. Who makes the mistake? You're unconscious. There is an unconscious connection between him and this reality. It happens to him. Now this is a fascinating insight. You didn't choose it. You forgot. You don't know the law. The blood happened to be here. The chaylev happened to be here. You thought it was Shuma. Consciously, you were completely not involved. Unconsciously, he's saying, you have a deep connection, you have a deep craving, and therefore, somehow, you attract this reality, and it happens to you. The atonement is not that he did it now. The atonement is because basically there's a deep connection, there's a deep craving. V'im kain shuv hakapara al shoyresh hachet shehevi lazevihi hamachshava al kain tu'una shchitas tzofen v'zeh shetluya ba'oila lohoyres ki achatas nami hakapara al hirur halev k'may oila. The oila, the Gemara says in Zvachim, is mechaper al hirur halev. It atones for thoughts of the heart, cravings of the heart. That's what the carbon oila atones. He says, what's the chatas? It's the same thing. It's not what you did. What you did was by mistake. It's the hirur alev. It's the internal unconscious desire and craving that the person has. That is what the person needs a carbon for. Vayikra Tofresh Ayin Aleph, 1911. Vayidei zeyuven inyan hashoygegin. Me'ayin bo mizdam alisha Yisrael sheyishge b'dvar yisav alamat tzarech kapara. How can a Jew make a mistake and why does he need atonement? Achu adavar. She'isha yetzahara simiyas einav l'shtoikik l'dvar isur. This is a man that the Yetzirah blinded him and he has a craving to something asur. He never thought of doing it because he's careful to do what God wants. He never So the Shem Shmuel says he has a craving to it. Now, the Shem Shmuel apparently means he has a conscious craving to it. Not an unconscious craving. But he never did it. Why did he not do it? Because he's a good Jew. He doesn't want to do it. But he has a craving. He's connected. Why does it happen to him by mistake? He attracts it because he has a conscious craving. So the Shem Shmuel actually doesn't say that the craving is unconscious. He may be aware of the craving, but he would never do it. But the fact that it happens to him is as a result of the craving that he had earlier, which may be conscious, that somehow puts him into this position that he makes the mistake. His conscious craving causes an unconscious act, an unconscious relationship in ways that he's not in control of, and that's what he's bringing the kapara for the tshuka, which is similar to the oila. That's why it's tzafon. As he says elsewhere, tzafon comes from the word hidden. Tzafon, the Even Ezra says, why is it called tzafon? Because the sun is hidden there. The sun is hidden because it's the north, it's cold. So tzafon is the place of hiddenness. In other words, it's the hidden craving, not the action, but the previous craving that may even be hidden at the moment because now it was a mistake. You weren't aware of it. Now, I want to bring you the second source. I'm going to read 2 paragraphs in Yiddish, and we'll understand Rabbi Akiva. I'm going to read 2 paragraphs in Yiddish. Das Guffe, was der Mensch hat gekannt bei Genen Aveire bescheuigig, ist ein Beweis, ist nicht wie es darf zu sein, weil wollte gewinnen, wie es darf zu sein, weil nicht durchgefallen nach Filu in Ascheugig, wie es steht, lo yu'unne le'tzadik kol oven. The fact that a person commits a shoigig, which is by mistake, means that there's something in the soul that is tainted, because if not, if there would be no connection, this would not happen to him. The mistake would not happen to him. Und das, was der Meisa Aveire ist gewinnen, nur bescheuigig, is aber in a gewissen Prat, der Begam von a Scheugig größer wie durch a Meise bemezet. In a way, the Scheugig demonstrates a spiritual issue that is more complex than a Mezet. Why? Weil wenn a Mensch tut a Paule bekavano midaitoi, weiß sie nicht auf so viel auf dem tiefen Verbund von dem Mensch mit der Sache, was hat getan. Es kann sein, dass die ganze Scheiche seine mit der Pole kommt nur beschaß Haasiyah und nur mit sein Koyach Haasiyah und der Darga Kavone wird das, bei welcher halt dann. Aber der Pole, was tut sich bei ihm von sich allein, ist sie doch aber Weise auf sein Mohus, als damit ist verbunden sein Ich, was ist tiefer von Kavone wird das. Und der Liebe zieht es ihm instinktiv zu tun, die Pole und so stark bis es ist herabgekommen bei Meise Bepoil. When I do something bemazed, which part of me is involved in the Aveira? My conscious self. I know I'm doing it. I'm upset. I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm lazy. I'm not in the mood. I hate whatever it is. I do it. So what's involved? My revealed consciousness. When I do the shoygig, my consciousness is not doing an Aveira. I don't know it's Shabbos. I don't know it's Yom Kippur. I don't know it's Chelev. I don't know it's blood. I don't know it's a sin. And yet, I'm doing it. Why am I doing it? Because there's an unconscious connection between me and that act. If not, lo yu'una l'tzadik kol oven. There is a craving, there is a relationship, there is a connection, but I can't even identify it. In fact, it's unconscious, and if it's unconscious, it means it's rooted in my very essence, in my very I, that's deeper than my conscious self, and therefore I'm unaware of the relationship, and it's coming out in a mistake. That's the kapara of the shoygig, and in many ways, it's more than amazing, which explains a fascinating thing, and that is the Gemara says in Zvachim. The Gemara says in Zvachim that an asham talui in many ways is more stringent than a carbon chatas. The Gemara says in Zvachim Daf Memches, an asham tali. What's an asham tali? An asham tali is if you have a suffix, if you did the Vayikra b'shoigig. Meaning, you ate something, and you're not sure it was chaylev. You may have eaten chaylev, you may have not eaten chaylev. You bring an asham tali. It's not you're sure you ate chaylev by mistake. And that, the Gemara says, is a more expensive carbon than a chatas. Why? It seems so strange. Here you're not even sure. The pshat is that here, you're so deeply connected, you can't even identify that you did it. So it may even be deeper in the person, in the unconscious of the person. So this is the idea that the shoigig needs kapara, because the shoigig is a window into what's happening in my essence, and the Torah is allowing me and saying, you have an opportunity here to figure out who you really are. You have an opportunity to figure out where your unconscious geschmack is. You didn't just do it by mistake. This is a Freudian slip. It was a slip, I know. But the slip came from somewhere. It came from your essence, and you're unaware of it. That means it's deeper in you. It's beyond your das. It's beyond your kavanah. It wasn't filtered through your consciousness. And that's why instinctively you can behave in this way. You need the kapara. According to this, it becomes crystal clear why the primary example for carbon chatas is always you wanted to eat shuman and instead you ate chaylev. From all the 43, that's what Rabbi Akiva uses, and that's what the Gemara usually uses. When you have an example of chatas, you wanted to eat shuman, you ate chaylev. Why? Because essentially, that captures the essence of the carbon chatas. Every carbon chatas is really about that. Why? So let me read one more paragraph of this sikha. V'bald as the asr dike peulas shebeshoigig kommen doch mit zad der Geschmack, was hat in sei, heißt dich das, als was für ein Sofik Israel soll nicht sein, ist der Inhalt von dem Sofik, in was ist ein Teinung. Zieh sein Vergnügen ist ein Mutterdicker, oder sein Teinung ist Rachman al-Itzlan an Asserdicker. Und der Rebbe bringt die Gemara die Dugma auf Ashem Tali, Sofik Chelev, Sofik Shuman, weil Chelev und Shuman kommen von Teinung. The fatty parts of meat, Shuman, is of course associated with pleasure, with delight. There's two types of tainug. There's a tainug of chelev, and there's a pleasure of shuman. Shuman is permitted pleasure, and chelev is forbidden pleasure. When I commit an Vayikra b'shoigig chas v'shalom, I wanted to eat shuman, and I ate chelev. What's really happening? In every situation, whatever it may be, it's basically revealing where my pleasure is. It's basically revealing that I may think my pleasure is shuman, but really my pleasure is chelev. Every carbon chatas for any one of the 43 thins is essentially metaphoric. It's expressed and allegorically in this point. You wanted to eat shuman, but really you ate chelev. You thought your tainug, your fat, is permissible, but look at the Vayikra b'shoigig, it means that you ate chelev. In other words, that there's an underlying unconscious pleasure and connection to things that may be contrary to the true design of your soul. So what's the kapara of the shoigig? The kapara of the shoigig is a window into the unconscious, which may reveal much deeper components about your true personality, even than things that you did b'mezid, because you did it by mistake. You didn't plan to do the Aveira, but it tells you much more about who you are, and the carbon chatas is a window into that. Which now explains to us why Rabbi Akiva wept by these two psukim. And this is what the Meshech Chochmah says in Parshas Matos. He quotes two Gemaras. One is an Amid earlier, Kedushin Daf Payalef Amid Aleph, and one is Mesechta Derech Eretz and Mesechta Smachas. Let's take a look. The third source from the bottom, Kedushin Daf Payalef Amid Aleph. Rabbi Akiva have a misloitzitz ba'ivre aveda. Rabbi Akiva used to mock people who sin with immorality. He used to mock. What did he say? He said, I don't understand how people have such little self-control. I don't understand. How can a person fall so low? One day, the Satan appeared to Rabbi Akiva like a woman on the top of a palm tree. Nokte ledikla v'kasolik v'azl. Rabbi Akiva was so taken by the sight, he started to climb the palm tree, swiftly, enthusiastically, and energetically, to go to the palm tree to meet this person. As he reached halfway in mid-palm tree, shafke, the Satan left him alone, meaning he stopped feigning the image of the woman. He went back to his regular self, and Rabbi Akiva saw that there was really nothing there, and that was the end of the saga. Amar, the Satan, said, Ilav de machrizi berakia, hizaru Rabbi Akiva v'teirasoi, shivisi ledamach tartemoi. If not that they announce in heaven, be careful with Rabbi Akiva and his Torah, I would have reduced your blood, your value, your dignity to 2 cheap coins. In other words, I would have proved that the great Rabbi Akiva is also capable of immoral behavior. So Rabbi Akiva, don't mock at Oivre Aveira and say, why can't they control themselves? Because in a moment of truth, when one experienced such a powerful urging, where would have the great Rabbi Akiva have been? Says the Meshech Chochmah. Now you understand why he cried. Now you understand why he cried in Parshas Matos. What happened in Parshas Matos? She was drinking wine. She thought she was doing something wrong. Really, she wasn't doing anything wrong. Hashem Yislach Lashem Yitzah Kapar. When Rabbi Akiva was climbing up the palm tree, says the Meshech Chochmah, he thought, what is he climbing towards? Climbing to a woman. Really, what was he climbing towards? Hevel Avolim, a Satan who was just making games. So essentially there was nothing wrong going on. It was just a test. So Rabbi Akiva wept from this pasuk, realizing that it applied to his own life. What about the second pasuk in Parshas Vayikra? On this there's another Gemara. Mesechta Derech Eretz, Perek Zayin. Amar Rabbi Akiva says, Kach hoyot chilas tashmishi lifnei chachamim. This is how I began serving the chachamim. One day, I'm traveling on the road and I find a meis mitzvah. What's a meis mitzvah? A corpse, and there's nobody available, no relatives, no friends who will take care of treating the corpse with dignity and burying it. And halachically, every Jew who encounters a meis mitzvah is obligated to tend to the meis mitzvah and take care of its final needs of burial, etc. I worked with this corpse for 4 million, approximately 4 kilometers. I walked with this corpse until I brought it to a cemetery and I buried the meis mitzvah. When I came and I related the events to my Rebbes, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, the great Tanoim who taught Rabbi Akiva, Amru li, they told me these words. Al kol psiyo shepasato, maila lecha kilu shafachto dam noki. Every step that you took to the cemetery, it's considered like you poured innocent blood. Why? The answer is when Yeshua came into Eretz Yisrael, one of the institutions was meis mitzvah koine mekoimai. Meaning, when somebody dies, there's no relatives, there's nobody to take care of it. There's a halacha that he owns his place. What do we mean his place? Wherever you find him, you can bury him right there, even though it's not a public cemetery. Meis mitzvah koine mekoimai. When Rabbi Akiva took this meis mitzvah and he carried it 4 miles, it was compromising the dignity that this meis mitzvah deserved, and therefore they used this strong term of shafachta dam noki, pouring innocent blood, even though the person obviously was gone, the person has died already, but compromising the dignity of the body. That's what they told Rabbi Akiva. Amarti lehem, I said, Rabboisai, my Rebbes, Lama, wow. In B'shah shenis kavanti l'schus nis chayafti. B'shah shaloi nis kavanti l'schus alachas kama v'chama. In this case, what was my intention? My intention was to be there for the Meis Mitzvah, to do something good. And yet, I was guilty because I made a mistake. So if somebody doesn't have such intentions, certainly. At that moment, I knew I cannot move away from being in the presence, serving, being attentive to Talmidei Chachamim. And the Masechta Smachis, he adds, Perek Daled Yutes, Rabbi Akiva, when Rabbi Akiva was ever told this story, when people told this story to Rabbi Akiva, he always said, this was the beginning of my schus, this was the beginning of my merit, when I realized the need for Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. Realized that Rabbi Yeshua didn't tell him, Rabbi Akiva, you violated a halacha. Rabbi Akiva, it's not the din. They said something else. They made it very personal. They realized he didn't know. They could have said, Rabbi Akiva, that's not the halacha. They made it very personal. On every step that you took, shafachta dam naki. That's what Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. Shimush Talmidei Chachamim means, doesn't mean you go to a shiur of a Rebbe, of a Rosh Hashiva. Shimush Talmidei Chachamim means there's the personal relationship. The Rebbe doesn't tell him, the halacha is different. I'll call psiya, every step that you took. Only somebody that you trust, and somebody who trusts you, your confidants, you could speak this way. It's about you and every step that you took with such harsh language. Rabbi Akiva, obviously Rabbi Akiva was a keli for this. So he says, Zu hoysat chilas chusi, Zokta sameach. When Rabbi Akiva learned Parshas Vayikra about the carbon chatas, he started to cry. He said, Madach, if somebody wants to eat shumon, and he eats chalev, in other words, he wants to eat kosher meat, and it may be even a mitzvah to eat it, maybe, and still he ate chalev by mistake, he needs kapara. He started to cry. Why did he start crying? Because it was his own story. Where was it his story? Masechta Derech Eretz. His intention was to bury a Meis Mitzvah. And yet, he compromised its dignity inadvertently. It caused him to weep. But what's fascinating is when they told the story to Rabbi Akiva, he always said, Zu hoysat chilas schusi. What's chilas schusi? Rabbi Akiva saw the mistake as the beginning of a schus, because it became educational. It taught him about the need of Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. It taught him of the need to have a real Rebbe. It showed him what he was lacking. So it became a schus. It was transformed. That's the carbon chatas. The carbon chatas is not. Your unconscious is rotten, decadent, and therefore you're a hopeless person. On the contrary, the carbon chatas is, don't be afraid of your unconscious. Of course there are demons and skeletons and ghosts in the unconscious. Das ist a Mensch. Asher nosi echte. Especially if you're a leader. Das ist a Mensch. They're there. The carbon chatas is the opportunity to identify it, to expose it, to put light under it, and to turn it into a schus, to use it as an education to figure out who you are and what you're capable of becoming. Have a wonderful week. Next, not Sunday, Mitzvah Hashem, there's a shiur we'll do on Pesach. About Pesach, yeah. Baruchim to you, Adayin Kadayin.
Thank you. Not disappointed.
Thank you.
By the way, that Purim Shmuz ain't very similar to, you did that thing with Shlomo Melech, remember?
Yeah. Shvuz, yeah.
Shvuz, remember?
Yeah.
Selbe Schnitt, gewaltig.
Yeah. Adayin Kadayin. Adayin Kadayin. Thank you so much.
The third explanation is a little bit, there's certain things that's in Hilchos Shabbos. Somebody, like you said, carries an Erev, he didn't know that it's... what could be that he has hidden...
So that's Pshat, lo ye'unna l'tzadik kol oven. Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mevi takol al yidei tzadikim. Our unconscious knows more than we think.
Right, but what could be wrong? He really wanted to carry without an Erev, but now Hashem, is the unconscious...
The unconscious doesn't work black and white. Right. He wanted to carry without a native. It means there's something about Shabbos that is not wholesome in him. Doesn't mean he wants to carry without a native. There's no Yetzer Hara for that.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
That means there's something about Shabbos that's unwholesome. There's something about Shabbos in him that's not full. You understand? It comes out, all Freudian slips. You don't say what it is. It comes out in different ways. And since it comes out in different ways, what happened? Everything? It's fine. Since it comes out in different ways, so you're megala what's in the unconscious.
I had to stick to the sheer
Leave
now.
Yeah.
I had to, because I'm learning the Yoimi is about the shoygig with the
Ksuvas.
Tam. If it's a your shop did something, why are you mechayiv to pay? If it's not, if it's a canal, why? You didn't explain it, the shor, because the chatas is the human fallacy. This is the shor, but still the shemira, whatever. There's something there to it.
Right.
It's a little easier to understand.
Right. But you understand what I'm saying? It's not that he has a taiva to carry on Shabbos when there's no Eidah. It means that there's something in his unconscious, about the concept of Shabbos that doesn't sit well with him. There's some
like a wake-up call.
It's a deficiency in his neshama.
It's something in his consciousness. Something in his consciousness that he has to work through. Something that is unwholesome in his consciousness about Shabbos that he has to work through. And we're not blaming a person for having unconscious issues. That's not the issue. That's the whole point there. We're not blaming. It could become a schus. It's the honesty. Don't be perfect. Be accountable. Don't be afraid of saying, I have to look beyond the surface. I have to go in deeper and see what's really going on. Don't be afraid of it. That's the carbon chatas. Huh?
That's where the battle is.
That's often where the bigger battle is.
The explanation of Shamish Pila is more that it's like a wake-up call. Okay, you did something because you have an unconscious something you really wanted to do. It doesn't have to be exactly like black and white.
Well, the Shemish Shmuel's time is that he had a shtoikakus, and he even knows about the shtoikakus. That's what's mashma from him. But mainly he did it. He ended up doing it, right? And look at the sikhs.
Black and white.
That's more. Even though there too, it's not stam, because as a result of their shtoikakus, now was a mistake. It means unconsciously you got into this situation. So that's itself is very Freudian, so to speak. And the look at the sikhs, the vart is that it could be the whole desire is unconscious. It's completely unconscious. And it may even be deeper in many ways than the asham.
So it's more like a wake-up call.
Yeah, and the asham talui is sometimes even more harsh than the chatas. Because over there's not even a wake-up call. It's called repression. In the asham talui, there's repression. And repression is worse, because you're not even aware of it. Huh? How do I know about Freud?
How do you know so much about it?
I don't know. How do you know about it?
I'll send you a paper how he does Sarah Mashkim, Sarah Ofin, is pure Freudian dream theory.
Yosef, yeah.
Yosef Nurikol.
Who wrote the paper?
It's a famous paper.
You're a psychologist? Okay. Give me your card.
I don't email you. See the thing with Pentagon. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Great talk.
Shekayach. So you have three pchinas. You have a carbon asham that's amazit. You did something b'mezit. Thank you. Tuesday morning, here at 9:30. You have a carbon asham, you did something b'mezit. Consciously, you did something wrong. You have a carbon chatas, you did something b'shoigeg, but now you're aware of it. So your unconscious has emerged into awareness, and you're accountable for it, you do a kapara. You have an asham talui, here is repression. Repression is it's unconscious and it's repressed. Because you're not even allowing yourself to figure out if you did it, for sure. There's a suffix. So you're still struggling. Did it happen? Did it not happen? Did it happen? The Gemara in Moed Katan Daf Yud Ches says that when a person is nechshen in something, right? So either he did it, or he did part of it, or he has episode shukah of doing it. So if he has a suffix, there's episode shayches, but he's not letting himself become aware of it. In other words, there's repression, and repression, that's even worse. And that's why it's shtei danke.
It's like the etzem the shagir is much worse than the mezid. Is what the sikh is doing. The problem is that Kiva said.
Yeah, of course. Listen. Mitzad the chait, mitzad the chefts of the chait, right? Mitzad the chet, the fact that there was a merida on a conscious level, you can't compare a shayik to a
Deeper
mezid.
is not worse. What do you
Right.
mean it's worse? I mean it's
Yeah,
deeper.
yeah. Yeah.
Even though Be'etzim you could say it's worse, because I have such a... It sounds like from the Sikha, from what I understood from Yiddish, is that when I do an Aveiro, so I'm lazy. All of a sudden I see a geschmack, a piece of meat,
You did it.
I did it done. So it's a laziness, it's
Right.
it's a taiva. When
Here,
it becomes more...
it's mohus, mohus.
It becomes my mohus.
Yeah.
That's understood. So it sounds like Be'etzim the Shayi is worse than the amazing. Because I've been suffering with this mohus for the last 15 years, as opposed to McDonald's. It's an hour, I went in and got the cheeseburger, I'm done. But Rabbi Kiva's punk fakir. That's what I'm struggling with.
Right.
Which is worse?
I think there's two different pchinas. In other words, mitzad the world of his galus, of course the mezid is far worse. Mitzad the world of mohus, mitzad the world of essence, mitzad avodas Hashem bepnimiyus, the shoygig is something concealed. So I think this.
B'dei Adam, there's an element of Mezid is worse. B'dei Shemayim, there's an element of that.
And also b'dei shemayim in the person. B'dei shemayim in the person.
Right. Actually, that's why Hashem Yisach Lo Yinos Avoin.
Hashem yislach la, yeah. Yeah. I think,
It's a chesed when it comes out, even a little.
When it comes out, but it's...
that's the Maila, yeah. That's the Maila.
In the four people
Yeah.
that you mentioned
Binyamin, Amram, Yishayan.
Amram was the Nasi. Amram was the Nasi of that generation. Yeah, even though Miriam told him,
Amram was the Gadol Hadar.
you did something that is...
Amram was the Gadol Hadar, yeah. But
Why only these four people? You can explain exactly. I mean, you explain
it's a good shaila. Why
does
these four? The Nakuda, but all these four were
Right. I understand because
Prussian.
why they said Ben or Av.
Amram relative to Moshe was a parush. He was the Gadol Hadar in the sense that he was the teacher, right? But Amram was from Shevet Levi. He wasn't involved. It doesn't seem like he was involved in the Anhaga. He was the Gadol Hadar in the sense that he was the Talmud Chacham. He was the leader in that sense as far as Gadlus of Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu. Adayin, ba'achav simchas. Yeah.
Another question?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Isur the Raisa, that you say is Chetza.
Yeah.
If it's Chetza, all the goyim have to be Asur also.
If Nissa Derais is a cheftze, it's still only for Jews. Why? Because the cheftze is always relative to the gavra. You understand? Yeah. In other words, if I have a certain blood type, so a certain food is not good for me. It's the cheftze of the food, but only my blood type is sensitive to that type of cheftze. So that's a mashal by a goy and a Jew. The soul of the Jew is sensitive to this type of cheftze. The soul of the goy is not sensitive to this type of cheftze. You understand? Yeah. Meshech Chachma? I'll tell you, the Meshech Chachma is in Matas. He just says, this happened to him, look in Kedushin. This happened to him, look in Derech Eretz. He's not, he doesn't say more. He just says it happened to him.